What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here. After the Eagles win a stunner, a total opposite of last week, they win 15-12 over the New Orleans Saints for a game that ended 15-12 and was that low scoring. It was as chaotic as it gets with back and forth play, turnovers, injuries, everything involved, a lot of questionable decision making, maybe by both teams. We will get into it all as they survive in New Orleans. We're live on YouTube this way. We are live on TikTok this way. To my side, we will get all the comments as they come in. It is the perfect Eagles win because for most of the game, you wanted to die watching them. And then in the end, they won. If you've seen that meme before where it's like, oh, I can't wait to watch my team play. Oh, I'm going to kill myself. Oh, nice. We won. That was the perfect game for that. So it's a perfect game to comment because there's going to be a lot of positive and there's going to be a lot of negative. So let's kind of get into that because as I'm prepping and thinking of what I'm going to talk about today, I at a lot of points was pretty confident they were going to win. I was confident going into this week, and I was pretty confident, despite how last week went, that the New Orleans Saints weren't going to put up 40 points against us just out of law of averages, out of pride, off of, some film things that the Eagles could adjust while facing the Saints. So going into the week, I did feel pretty confident. But as I'm sitting here prepping to do this show, I was pretty frustrated because I thought we got some career performances from multiple guys in a spot where we needed the most down, some infrastructure guys on the offensive line with our top two receivers. And in the end, I really thought that I was going to have to waste those performances with all those guys because the coach and the quarterback, who have been in a kind of a media civil war of whose fault is it, who should they move on? For the first three quarters, you're probably watching that game saying to yourself, why don't we just move on from either of them? Because I can't put up with this much longer with the decision making, both in play calling and situational awareness, which is something that we were disappointed in last year at the end of the season. And really, even when they were 10-1 last year, we were still questioning some situational awareness. And then some things from your quarterback, they're saying, hey, didn't we run the last guy out of town for making these decisions where you're holding on to the ball for too long, allowing defensive linemen to get back into the play? That leads to a strip sack, throwing the ball over the middle of the field. When your receiver, that play just wasn't really there. So you get a interception in the end zone. So we'll get into all that, but let's talk about why they won this game, why they were able to pull this off. A total opposite performance from the defense today. I was thrilled, enamored with everything they did because I think they did so well in stopping what the Saints do and what they try to set up in their offense. They brought it up. This looked like, on paper, a recipe for disaster. The Eagles are letting up 6.6 yards per carry on first down, so you're constantly kind of behind the sticks where other teams are in second and manageable. Meanwhile, that's exactly what the Saints had been doing to set themselves up in good situations. They were rarely behind the sticks. They got Kamara going early, so they were in constant, second and ones. And you saw that kind of open up their whole playbook, and it created a ton of balance for them. Meanwhile, today, the defense constantly won at the line of scrimmage. And I think it's great for multiple reasons. One, seeing some life from that defensive line unit was just great in general. Two, they did win the game behind that unit. And three, it was led by two guys who you thought are going to be the future of this franchise after Fletcher Cox retired this year. And that's what you got. I thought that was the best game we've seen from Jalen Carter as an Eagle. He totally blew up that offensive line. He was constantly in the backfield. He was constantly winning one-on-ones. He was constantly putting pressure on Derek Carr. Him and Jordan Davis were putting the Saints behind the sticks. It wasn't a 2nd and 4 situation they were in. It was a lot of 2nd and 11s, right? Like, you couldn't set up play action a ton and take those deep shots to Rashid Shaheed because they had limitations on what they could do. They were finally getting pressure. And while the defensive ends, they still have some work to do. We saw signs of life from Josh Sweat. Brandon Graham still giving it his all, even at his age in year 16. But I really thought Jalen Carter was the best player on the field today. And that is something that was as advertised when he was drafted, that he could take over a game from the defensive tackle position and kind of dominate and dictate what an offense can do because you only have limited time before he gets to the quarterback or he wins his one-on-one against an offensive lineman, puts pressure on your quarterback, or just flat out blows up the play and gets a few tackles for loss like he did today. They were constantly behind the sticks. I thought those two guys were incredible. And it's exactly what you hope for, because hopefully this is springboarding going forward. Like, anytime Jalen Carter gets into one of those modes where you kind of lose him a little bit and mentally it doesn't seem like he's kind of, all engaged in the game, show him that tape from that New Orleans Saints game today. Show him what he could be in this league. Like, that was an Aaron Donald level performance from him today. And I know at sometimes he comes off as an asshole. It's kind of like the Draymond Green thing. It's like, I hate playing against this guy. But if he's on your team, you probably love him. That's kind of how I felt with Jalen Carter, where I know he's pushing the limit in what could be an unsportsmanlike penalty going up against some of these offensive linemen after the play, stuff like that, where he's constantly in these little battles on the field. But that's showing me that he's engaged. And that was the most engaged that I've seen him as a Philadelphia Eagle. And it was his best performance as a Philadelphia Eagle. I thought he was very, very good in both run and pass. And Jordan Davis has got a lot of criticism because, well, honestly, because he's not Kyle Hamilton. And I get it. If they went back into that draft, they'd probably take Hamilton at the safety position. But still, Jordan Davis has a purpose here. And lately, I find we kind of have lost that purpose because of how bad they've been in run defense. Well, I thought he, again, just like Carter, dictated a lot of what the Saints wanted to do. They clearly wanted to get the ball to the outside when those like outside zones and kind of get away from the middle of that unit. And I still think that they did a great job. You saw Jordan Davis in the backfield quite a lot. He had his first career sack today, in which, it looked kind of like a blown play. He gets to the quarterback, showed some athleticism. It's awesome. It was great to see it from those guys. I saw a comment in the TikTok here as well about Zach Bond. He was phenomenal again as well. One of the key moments of that game, the block punt, where you're saying, damn, we've dominated this game, right? Like, we've totally dominated. We're not even seeing this vaunted offense of the New Orleans Saints on the field. And they get this block punt. They're up 3-0 there in the third quarter. And we're put on the short side of the field with our defense after the block punt. At that point, the Saints had less than 100 yards of offense going into the fourth quarter. Through 3 quarters, they had less than 100 yards of offense. They go for it on 4th and 1. Jordan Davis blows up that play, and Zach Bond gets the tackle behind the line of scrimmage to make that stop. He was phenomenal again. And that front seven, which has been much maligned, played as good as they could have played and honestly put in a lot of unfortunate situations to only give up 12 points. They give up 3.3 yards per carry for Alvin Kamara, who's been one of the best running backs in the league. For a team that had scored 40 plus in both of their games, they gave up 12 points total. They were constantly put in bad situations, and we rarely even saw that offense of the field. The Eagles on offense, and we will get into them soon. I want to focus a little bit more on the defense. They were able to move the ball, which chewed up a lot of clock. They don't have a lot of home run hitters without A.J. Brown and then losing Devontae Smith. But they were able to move the ball effectively, get down the field. That kept that offense off. They showed it in the second quarter. They were at a 13-minute to 1 minute and 49-minute disparity in terms of time, where we saw the Saints on the offensive field I think it was 2 series there in the second quarter, and both were 3 and outs. I thought they were pretty cowardly when they punted on 4th and 2 from their own 42, but hey, we'll take it. And that was one of those 3 and outs. But the defense did a phenomenal job. And then finally getting their shot at redemption here with, okay, we're saying to ourselves, this is looking a lot like last week. So we're up a field goal. They've got 1 timeout. They've got to go the length of the field. They need a field goal to tie it. They need a touchdown to win it. We're in the same predicament as we were in last weekend. There's 50 seconds left, and you're saying, please, defense, please just hold one more time. They get pressure on the quarterback, which they couldn't do a week ago, and the defense makes the turnover play, which they haven't had so far this season with the Reed Blankenship pick. That seals it. That wins it. That was phenomenal from the defense. From start to finish of that game, they were A++ in what they did. It was the best defensive performance we have seen from this unit in over a year. And honestly, it's one of the best defensive performances in this stretch of time under Nick Sirianni and with this team and this core of guys. We'll call it like the Sirianni Hurts era. Could that have been the best offense or best defensive performance we've seen from them? I think so. I really think so, all things considered. Even in some of those games, like we talked about, they went 10-1 last year, but teams were able to move the ball on them. And a year before that, even in the time when we went to the Super Bowl, we were calling for the defensive coordinator's head. We wanted Jonathan Gannon out of there. So everything that they had to deal with today, again, it was an offense that turned the ball over. It was the block punt. It was a really hot offense from the Saints. It was being on the road. They were phenomenal. They were great. Chris Olave had the touchdown, but you didn't really hear a lot from him. They limited the explosive plays. They showed the graphic late in the game. And aside from that Alvin Kamara catch over Zach Bond's helmet, which even that was pretty good coverage. If he turns his head, he probably is able to make a play. Aside from that, they really had no explosive plays. That was the first Kamara 10+ yard play of the game right there. And that's in the fourth quarter. So they held up for 3.5 quarters in front of that. And like I said, this cannot go unstated with the decision-making on offense. To limit the Saints to 100 under 100 yards in the first 3 quarters, saved them and put them in a position where the Eagles could even come back in this game, given the decision making on offense. Didn't we hold them to like 120+ yard play? We did. It was the Kamara play in the fourth quarter over Zach Bond, and even that was pretty good coverage. 120+ yard play for a team that had, I think, 7 last week, 7 20+ yard plays. Bond is legit, impressive defensive performance. I thought it was the best defensive performance from the year. Thanks for the comments, and I think Bond is legit. Nakobe Dean also played well. Bond just had bigger plays and bigger moments, like that 4th and 1 that we mentioned, getting that stuff there. And I'll tell you what, for a unit that's really struggled, how many times did we see today where it was 3rd and short, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and they were able to make big stops by getting into the backfield and winning one-on-one battles against an offensive line unit that we were saying, hey, this might be one of the best in the league. We were moving the ball. We just got to put up points. Let's stay there. Let's get to the offense here in a second. Saving grace has been O-line and receivers that can get open to 3 to 7 yards. As a Saints fan, good game, but we beat ourselves. I did think there were some questionable decisions by the Saints, but you could make the case the Eagles lost the turnover battle. They lost the penalty battle. They kind of almost beat themselves in the end. It's really just weird decisions. Like you said, it's been head scratching through 3 weeks. We'll unfortunately have to get into this even with the win. If we can play defense like we did today more this year, we could go somewhere. I totally agree. Like I mentioned in the start, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, those are the two. I think those are the best game they've played as a Philadelphia Eagle. If you're getting that level of energy and that level of consistency from them, that turns into a pretty solid defensive line unit. Again, the ends aren't great. We're just going to have to deal with that. And what's troubling for an Eagles fan is the turnovers, and Saints had a bad day. Should have been 21-0. Yeah, it's kind of funny because they go up 12-7 right there. There's 2 minutes left. And you're saying to yourself, man, if we just kick those field goals, it's a totally different game. Like, we don't even need – it wouldn't matter. We get that 2-point conversion stop. Again, another great play by Zach Bond. And you're saying to yourself, hey, we're winning. Like, we'd still be up right there if it wasn't for the decision-making that we had. Reed Blankenship progressed well, in my opinion. I think it's been a real saving grace for them to find guys late in the draft, like a Reed Blankenship, like undrafted free agents, guys late. They have a few of them now that I can think of, and we're going to get into a few that were kind of thrust into the role today. But Blankenship has been really steady on that defensive side of the ball, and it does seem like he is the key turnover guy. Like when you're going full boomer dad, and you're like, need a sack here, need a turnover here, it usually ends up being Reed Blankenship, and he sealed that game today. He's rarely out of position as well, so it's really good. And I was really, really impressed again with him, just the defense making that play, right? Like, it's the play that has haunted them. Going back to last year against the Seahawks, they couldn't get themselves off the field, right? They couldn't win that game. This year against the Falcons, and there's multiple examples of this, right? Like they showed the graphic after the Monday Night Football collapse. They'd had 4 leads that they'd blown in the last 2 minutes dating back to last year. And this was one of those scenarios where you're staring at it again and you're saying to yourself, all right, well, we're up 7-6. We give up the touchdown. All right, we scored. It's 15-12. Can we hold? And they finally do it. They got pressure on Derek Carr, took him out. It's a bad throw. It's a forced throw. And they make that pick there with Reed Blankenship. So all in all, I thought it was a great, great game from a lot of different people on the defensive side of the ball. Quinyon Mitchell, again, continues to impress as a rookie. I think there was maybe once where he gave up a reception where you're like, you got twisted and turned around. I know Kaylee Ringo kind of got twisted and turned around when he was thrust into action. But aside from that, I thought Quinyon was awesome. I thought he had a pick 6 on that one play. And the young guys playing well. Like I said, I thought we were going to have a frustrating conversation about the coach and the quarterback, who are the experienced guys, right? Like, they've been here for a while. Talk about them and wasted the opportunity of these young guys playing the game of their life. Saints here, I respect y'all, but we will meet again in the playoffs. Let's hope so. Honestly, I mentioned this at the beginning. It was 15-12, but it was chaotic and exciting the entire time. All I'm going to say is the refs always calling that roughing the passer. I'm not sure which play that was, but I think there were a few different plays. There was a penalty that I think a lot of us thought got missed that led to one of our players being out of the game, but it was definitely a slugfest where we saw a lot of injuries on both sides with a lot of different people getting hurt mid-game and a lot of people that we're not used to getting thrust into roles, especially on the Eagles side of the ball. Let's flip from defense to offense. Should we just keep going with the good and save the awful conversation we have to have on the coach and the quarterback for the end? Listen, Saquon Barkley's fucking awesome. Oh, I love when Giants fans are like, oh, Devin Singletary, he costs less. Who cares? Saquon's awesome. That play happens where Devontae Smith gets knocked out of the game. They were moving the ball. They had some rhythm. They threw it to Devontae 3 straight times. Now you're saying to yourself, all right, so we're down multiple on the offensive line. We're down multiple wide receiver. They literally asked Greg Olsen in the broadcast booth, who was phenomenal himself today in the broadcast booth. They say, who do they go to? immediate 60-yard touchdown run from Saquon Barkley. They needed that more than anything. It gave the entire team a pulse, seeing him celebrate in the crowd with the Eagles fans who were causing defense chants. You could hear them in the Superdome, well-traveled again. He's awesome. I love watching him play, and you needed him in a game like this. You're like, all right, I'm looking around. Who can I rely on? Because everyone I'm used to, it's one of those games where as much as you follow the team, you're looking out there and you're like, wait, number who is what again? Like Johnny Wilson catches a pass, and you're saying to yourself, is that a tight end? Oh, yeah, that's Johnny Wilson, the rookie, the 6'7" kid. You know, you're looking at there, you're like, Fred Johnson. Oh, yeah, Fred Johnson, the backup left tackle, backup right tackle. It was one of those games where you're just running out of names that you knew there because you're not used to seeing these guys in the field in big moments. So to have somebody as reliable as Saquon really, really saved them today. I really thought the offensive line, again, you want to talk – we focused on a lot of negatives with the collapse and how the game went for a while today where they couldn't put up points. So we talk about all the negative. The offensive line this year has been fantastic. And down two guys today in Mekhi Becton, who got hurt, and Lane Johnson, who they said he was thrown up. And I think they mentioned it later. I thought he had a concussion. It looked like he did, and I think he ended up getting evaluated for that. For Fred Johnson and Tyler Steen to get thrust into that position mid-game, mid-second quarter, on the road, down in the Superdome with a team that likes to blitz and like to bring pressure, I cannot sing the praises of those guys enough because what a difficult situation to be put in, the most difficult that you can be in as an offensive line. And then it's not even like you have the familiarity of the rest of the veterans. You're on an island over there together, two guys who hadn't played at all, and now you're being thrust in at the same time. You kind of have to operate on your own. Tyler Steen has to be like the silent count guy who's working with Cam Jurgens to get the ball snapped, all while trying to pick up pressures on with Fred Johnson, who also hasn't played, on the right side of the ball against like a team I mentioned that likes to blitz. They were so good. And it looked like we didn't miss a beat with Lane Johnson and Mekhi Becton being out there. And I think that is very rare in the NFL to not see your rhythm kind of get disrupted when there's offensive line turnstiles and people are going in and out. They were so good. I think what Kellen Moore did very well is when the second half started, they re-emphasized the usage of Saquon Barkley, which allowed the offensive line to get a rhythm, which allowed people to kind of get driving down the field. They saw it on the touchdown run from Saquon Barkley, 3 straight pancakes, right? Landon Dickerson, Tyler Steen, everybody out there, Cam Jurgens just pancaking people for a Saquon house call. And then they're in a 3rd and 16 there at the end of the game. They were able to hold up. They get the ball down to the 4. And they're like, you know what? Let's keep this simple, which is something that got criticized last week with them getting a little too cute, a little too creative. Instead of running the ball behind that offensive line, throwing it to Saquon Barkley on 3rd and 3. Today, they were like, it's 1st and goal from the 4. You can just get the fuck out of our way. And we're going to run it. They were going to run it 4 straight times there. I guarantee you, even if they don't score on 1st and goal, that ball was not going in the air. That was going to Saquon Barkley 4 straight times unless it was a tush push. They were great. And then the last guy I want to spotlight, Dallas Goedert, who we talked about this on the show this week. He's kind of been a ghost through 2 weeks. He had the game of his life. Another guy just like Jordan Davis, like Jalen Carter. Absolute game of their life. It was something we talked about. They needed to emphasize him. He needed to be a larger structure of the game. And I think they realized that coming out of Monday Night Football, to be down A.J. Brown, all right, who's going to step up? Dallas Goedert has that potential, and they didn't utilize it last week. We said time and time again in our preview show, this would be the Dallas Goedert week. And we said, this is the game where you see him take a tight end screen that would go 20 yards. Well, it didn't work, but it was the early emphasis that I was encouraged by, where he had that tight end screen. It's like, all right, you're looking for him. He's supposed to be a part of this offensive game plan this week. And he ended up being 10 catches for 170 yards, including the huge 3rd and 16 after a sack, 61-yard, almost house call. I thought he was going to make it, and then I got concerned when he didn't. Amazing. I thought it was amazing, and it was the type of performance. Hey, I think we would have taken half of that after the first 2 weeks and the lack of utilization there. So I just really like how they kind of clean things up. Now, it's not totally clean, but they saw some things that they could, utilize, emphasize. Dallas Goedert was definitely one of those. And I just thought the game of his life in the time that they needed it the most, with A.J. Brown going out and with Devontae Smith going out. I'd like to talk about the Devontae Smith thing for a second, because I was like, that's not a penalty. And I'd love to hear from the comments what other people think. he catches it for 5 yards. He's being driven back by 3 guys. The play's over, and then he gets cheap shotted from the backside. I know the play's not technically over, but isn't that the most unnecessary roughness penalty of all time? Like, there's no way that he is going to make a play. The play's over. They're about to whistle it dead, and they kind of just let a defensive lineman take a blindside cheap shot on a guy who concusses him. And the age of player safety, even if that's not letter of the law, unnecessary roughness, isn't that the biggest cheap shot that you could ever see? So I was very confused that there wasn't a penalty there, but it was like immediate karma with the 67-yard run from Saquon Barkley. But I thought Devontae, again, was really, really good. So it sucks that he got knocked out of the game like that. And in a shot that I was looking live, I'm like, that's not a unsportsmanlike, unnecessary roughness penalty. And they got one later in the game where, Trevor Penning, he's a good offensive lineman, but what a scumbag move to just take Darius Slay, drive him through the bench. And it's just like, why? Do you feel better about yourself that you took the 6 foot, 180 pound corner and pancaked them into the bench? It ended up that it would have hurt them so bad if they didn't score right there, because they were in field goal range after that first down run on that play, and he takes them out of field goal range with that 15-yard penalty. There was some shit you saw from the Saints where I was like, listen, I'm not defending a daff of what Jalen Carter's doing out there, but you guys came off as huge scumbags. There's a viral video going around after the cheap shot from Devontae Smith where he's laying there concussed. The defender from the Saints spit on him. So, you know what? I'm a big believer in karma. They wanted to play dirty. They wanted to play tough. And in the end of the game, they couldn't handle our offensive line. We got behind them, and we finally got pressure, beat up their offensive line that's been well praised and well-deserved through the first 2 games of the season, but we won in the trenches. When everything else was going wrong, they won in the trenches today, and it was a phenomenal performance by both the offensive line and the defensive lines. Total domination on both sides. Hello from South Philly. Go Birds. I'm sure it's a party down there. It is the most Sunday fun day of all time right now in Philadelphia. 70 degrees, sunny. Eagles win. We could clinch the division tonight in baseball too. This is great. I'm seeing preach in here, so I'm assuming people are agreeing that that's probably like a cheap shot penalty on Devontae Smith. I hated that. And again, it put them in another position where you're saying, I don't even know where they go with this ball. We're just losing guys too quickly to be able to stay in this game, where they're down their starting right tackle. They're down their starting right guard. They're down their top 2 wide receivers, and they're really not getting much from the other receivers. Paris Campbell made some plays. Jahan Dotson ran good interference on that legal interference on that 61-yard play by Goddard. But aside from that, really wasn't giving you much. And Johnny Wilson, I think, is just very, very raw. They're not getting a ton from wide receiver 3. So I think that is it's a good thing for Jalen Hurts to stay composed. And they moved the ball well, and he's kept them in this game by his command of the offense, which I think he's had a pretty good job of through the first 3 weeks. 1 to clinch, 3 for bye, and 7 for home field for the Phillies tonight. I'm going to try to stay Eagles, but I'm so excited for the Phillies game tonight and the fact that they could clinch the division. And I believe the Brewers and Dodgers both lost yesterday, so a win today is huge with the tiebreaker over both of those guys. And like I said, it's just a beautiful day in Philadelphia. Why don't we just have a day, win our baseball game and our football game? Why don't we just do that? But back to the Eagles here. The offense moved the ball incredibly well. We talked about it last week. In an unfortunate circumstance, the best defense that they had was just simply keeping them off the field. The offense went on a 9-minute drive last week, and it was pretty much the only time where the defense could hold themselves together, right? It's just not being on the field. This week, the defense was the total opposite. They were A++, but still, the Eagles were able to move the ball very effectively through run and pass. Through the first quarter and a half, I believe Jalen Hurts hit 8 different targets. Devontae Smith was still in the game at that point, but they were down A.J. Brown. So being down your A1, wide receiver 1, and being able to spread the ball around like that is really, really good work. It's kind of just like an efficiency thing. And I thought they were really efficient in how they ran the ball. And they kind of re-emphasized Saquon coming out of halftime, which I liked because I think they got away from it late. And admittedly, it's kind of tough when you're put in that position where you have 2 new offensive linemen and you're just trying to kind of, you're taking on water onto the boat with all those injuries, and you're just kind of trying to figure yourself out on offense. So getting into the halftime locker room, re-emphasizing Saquon, allowing those offensive linemen to get a little bit more confident and comfortable in what they're doing on the field, on the road, down a field goal. That was really, really good work. And Jalen Hurts kind of kept them in this. Now, we're going to have the conversation on Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, because the decision-making is what's holding this team back from being good versus elite. Let's talk about Jalen Hurts first. The turnovers are what we ran the last guy out of town for. This is Carson Wentz shit. You can't make that throw in the end zone. You just can't. And some of these interceptions early in the season, I excused it in week 1. He was trying to make a play early in the game. They came back and won, and he was great for the next 3 quarters. He was really, really good, right? And he ran the ball so well last week too. So there's been a lot of good things. I just talked about his command of the offense. The turnovers, throwing it into the end zone, and Greg Olsen mentioned it. It's not a great route for DeVonta Smith. He's not a big guy. That's more of a route for a tight end or AJ Brown, a bigger bodied receiver. But still, DeVonta Smith, like there's nothing there for Jalen Hurts on that DeVonta route for you to throw that ball into the end zone. The safety is on that. You can't make that throw. The fumble. Lane Johnson blocked the defensive end out of the play. And now you're holding onto the ball for so long. You're holding on to it so long that he blocked the defensive end back into the play to cause the strip sack. These are Carson Wentz mistakes that led to him being traded to the Colts and effectively being run out of town by this team and by this fan base. That's the stuff that can't happen. And it's costing them points. It cost them points the first 3 weeks, honestly. They're losing the turnover battle every single week with these decisions. And what's mind-boggling is you look at his stats early in that second quarter, he was 9 for 10 with the only incompletion being the interception. So you're making the right plays 9 out of 10 times. And on that 10th time, it is backbreaking. You can't allow that to happen. And those 2 decisions right there that are so dumbfounding are what's keeping this offense from being elite and from him being in that elite category with like Lamar Jackson, with, let's say, I don't want to say Mahomes because I think he's so far ahead of everybody else, but you know, that like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow group of guys. Like the main difference here is Jalen Hurts he has that same command. He is that same dual threat, but turnovers like that just absolutely kill you. And again, they don't really need to happen, and everything else he's doing is doing really well. It's just holding on to the ball for too long and forcing throws. It's too Wentz-like. It's got to stop. And you see the difference. If they got 3s there instead of a fumble, instead of an interception, it was a great comeback win, but we're sitting pretty late in that game where the Saints would be on their heels and they'd still be behind even after that Olave touchdown. Agreed. Run the ball, gets 3 points. Don't force it. Yeah, there's too much stuff being forced. So is Smith okay? I'm worried. He absolutely has a concussion. I don't know if he'll be able to play next week. We'll probably find out this week. I don't know if AJ Brown will be able to play. I think it's probably a 50-50 shot. As a Saints fan, I'm glad the Eagles shut up our fan base. Listen, the Saints are still a really good team, but we needed that one, and I thought they were really, really good today. Listen, that crowd is pretty loud for the Eagles down there in the Superdome. Back to the offense. Like I said, Jalen Hurts, when he's literally 9 out of 10 on his first 10 throws, and the 10th is a forced interception in the end zone. Think about if he can just clear that from his repertoire and make smarter decisions and stop the turnovers, how good this offense would look and the points that they'd be putting up. He's not in good situations right now. It's not easy to play without your top 2 receivers on the road, especially against a defense that likes to blitz and bring pressure like that. Again, he got another phenomenal performance from his offensive line, even with some backup guys. But if you just stop the turnovers, I think they're in a good spot. I don't think the penalties are on him. I think that's more of just like being undisciplined. There are too many wide receiver tight end penalties, an absurd, abnormal amount of wide receiver tight end penalties happening from this team. There's a lot of holds on the outside. Anytime it seems like they run a wide receiver screen or try to stretch it to the outside with the running back, they're getting flagged for holding. And Johnny Wilson's been called a few times to the point, listen, you couldn't take him off the field today because Covey was hurt, DeVonta Smith was hurt, AJ Brown was hurt. He was out there not by choice. It was because they had nobody left. But it's at the point where I don't think he can be in as a blocker until he kind of learns what he's doing, but because it's happened multiple times. And DeVonta Smith, an illegal formation. This is stuff like that can't happen. And it happened in multiple like positive second downs. That DeVonta Smith penalty happened when it was 2nd and 4. You got 6 yards on a carry and first down. That's awesome. It's happened multiple times this year where it was 2nd and 1. It happened last week. It happened this week. You're in a 2nd and 1 situation. You get a positive play and they have to bring it back because of a hold. They're blocking the back. One of your tight ends or one of your wide receivers kind of holds. It's one of those things that it feels like an abnormal amount for a team. like way too many to be happening at least 2 or 3 times a week. If they cut that out, again, these are things that they should be cleaning up, and maybe they do because we're only 3 games into the season. But think about the difference that makes when you're not going 7 penalties for 50 yards every week with 2 turnovers. What that offense would look like if that happened. Where'd you get that hat? I forget the name of it. I actually bought it from a flea market, so I'd have to find the tag for you and let you know. But if you follow us, I can DM you the link to it. Hurts is overrated, not sorry. I think he's perfectly rated at this point. Like, I don't think people are saying he's one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. And I think the decision making is frustrating a lot of people, but at the same time, his legs look good. He made some tough throws today. He didn't panic under pressure when they were down for most of the game, and it looked like it was really frustrating not putting points up on the board after being able to move the ball. The Kamara late hit was obscene. That one, I thought, listen, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Jalen Carter, 2 guys that really pushed the limit, and I thought he pushed the limit a little too far, that one. But at the same time, like, I thought that Devontae Smith hit was absolutely fucking obscene too. So I guess we're even, and it knocked Devontae Smith out of the game. It should have been 15 yards. So there's nothing we could do. Now to the coaching staff. Even with the win, if you call into the local radio shows tomorrow, you know what's going to be the number one topic of conversation. I tried to save it as long as we could and focus on all the positives. The situational awareness from this coaching staff is some of the worst that you've ever seen. They have no confidence in their game flow. It doesn't seem like they have a feel for the game on when to be aggressive and when to not be aggressive. It cost them last week where, yeah, if Saquon catches that ball, they win the game. But you could have run behind your offensive line. You could have went for it on 4th down there. It's a pick and choose of where they want to be aggressive. The situational awareness is killing me. And today, I thought it really hurt them because we're not utilizing common sense in situations that we were. So with 14 seconds left in the half, it's 4th and 1. You have 1 timeout left. It's an obvious tush-push situation, but let's think about it. If they do get the 1st down there with the tush-push, they're going to have to use their final timeout. And then what happens? You take 1 shot to the end zone with no timeouts or throw the ball immediately away. Okay. Or is that the time where if you have a fake tush push that leads to a pass, you try for the home run there? Like, you don't have a problem with being aggressive. It's how they're being aggressive. Like, the play that they ran was a fake tush push to Saquon Barkley. Say he does get the 1st down right there and gets tackled. You're in the same situation you'd be in if you ran the tush push. You'd be 12 seconds, no timeouts, having maybe 1 shot at the end zone. It just doesn't make sense. Like, the situational awareness is crazy. Like, if you want to be aggressive and go for it there, fine. But why does that play make sense in that scenario? That predicament of going fake tush push run versus tush push just leads you to the same outcome. It doesn't change anything. And the fact that they are making those decisions is crazy to me. And then you come out, you go for it again instead of you kicking the field goal. And in there, I think everyone's like, fine, you can be aggressive, but maybe in that situation where the defense has been holding all day, you're down 2 offensive linemen, maybe just you've already run 6 minutes off the clock in the second half to start, maybe just point some points up considering how things have been going. You already turned it over twice on the plus side. You already got stuffed on 4th down for the plus side. Why don't you just kick there on 4th and 3, tie the game up at 3, and have some morale points and feel good about yourself? Like, the situational awareness of when to be aggressive, when to not be, like, they're just so unsure of themselves. And even when they are aggressive, it's fake aggressive. Like, that tush push play is not real aggression. You're just ending up in the same situation that an actual tush push would be. I don't get it. And then you kick a 60-yard field goal. So it's ironic that they finally kicked the field goal and they're willing to do it from 60. And it's just like, you want to be aggressive on 4th and 3 today, even though you're down. But last week, like, you were up and you didn't want to be aggressive on 4th and 3 against the Falcons and go for it there after the Saquon drop. It's you're picking and choosing, and it's like they're coin flipping when to be aggressive and how to be aggressive, and more so how to be aggressive. Like, I have no problem with the aggressiveness most times, especially in these days. And it's not even an analytics thing. Like, it's just like basic common sense that you go for it on a lot of these 4th downs, but it's how they're being aggressive that's really bothering me. And it's just like there's such a lack of common sense on this shit. And right there, like, those 2 things, it's like, what is the outcome? Like, what is your best case scenario where Saquon gains 3 yards on 4th and 1? right at the end of the half and there's 12 seconds and no timeouts, you're going to end up kicking a field goal. So why don't you just try to draw them off sides? Or A, or two, if there is a pass play in that tush push, that's how you be aggressive in that situation. You go for the home run. It's like they want to double in the gap and be somewhat aggressive where they swing for the fences, but also don't want to strike out. They have no feel on how to be aggressive. And I know Sirianni gets a lot of the blame, but I think Kellen Moore is also the play caller. So it's tough, but that the coming out of the half bothered me even more than the tush push play at the end of the half. It's 4th and 3. You're down 3-0. You're the walking wounded. You're down 3 receivers and 2 offensive linemen. Just put points there. Put some pressure on the other team for once. Make them counter you. Your defense has done their job. You have done your job. You've moved the ball for 6 minutes, converted on 3rd downs. Your quarterback made a play. Your running back made a play. You'd run it well with him. Devontae Smith had a big catch on that drive. You'd done it. You did your job, and then you failed by not kicking right there and taking the points and putting more pressure on your defense. And that was a unit until today had been much maligned. It is confusing. It's dumbfounding. But if you ask them off the record, the coaching staff, they'd also tell you it's confusing and dumbfounding. It doesn't feel like they have any conviction in how they want to be aggressive. And the situational awareness is killing them. It is killing them because there's a reason that every game that they have played since October of last year has been a 1-possession game. And it's because of the little in-between details that they are struggling with. The 4th and 3 is one of them where they didn't kick. The Saquon fake tush push was another. That's a difference of 6 to 13 points right there that you lost because of that. Couple that with your franchise quarterback turning it over twice to 2 to 3 times a week. That is why you're ending up in all of these late game 3 to 6 point swings, right? That is why that is happening. You could be 3-0, you could be 1-2, but a lot of that is where you're ending up in these swings is being on the wrong side of those decisions. And it's felt like for the past 2 years, they are constantly on the wrong side of those coaching decisions, and your quarterback is not helping you by turning it over twice a week. I'm a Saints fan, and I'm kin to an Eagles player. Which Eagles player? Eagles wanted more. Having Warner tackling RBs and tight ends is absolutely absurd. They're really good. I thought the linebackers were really, really good today. Yeah, I thought the defense bailed him out again and again, even after that situation. DeJean is awesome. He actually got some playing time, and he probably will if Covey's seriously hurt. He becomes your punt returner for the Eagles. So we'll see what he's able to do. But I think he'll have an impact, just like Quinyon Mitchell's been having an impact. And I have no problem seeing these young guys on the field and seeing what you got. And so far, they've actually answered the bell. And I think some of them answered the bell in the biggest way. Are you worried about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? Good question. I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, we know what he is at this point. There's a reason why he wasn't brought back after the Super Bowl season, and he wanted a long-term deal, and he didn't get it anywhere else. And he went to Detroit on a 1-year deal, and then, hey, they didn't sign him after that, and now he's back here. I think we kind of know what he is. He struggles in coverage sometimes. I don't think it's fair, him being lined up on Chris Olave with the game on the line, but he's a sure tackler. He gets lost sometimes, but he's always involved. He hits hard. He's out there. He brings some attitude to a unit that did not last year. So again, I think he's a above average safety who is a great tackler who you can bring down the line. I think he will get himself lost in coverage a few times, and he did on that touchdown. But aside from that, I don't think he was bad today. I don't think anybody on the defense was bad. Eagles defense played a great game, and they need to stay consistent like that. Yeah, let's build on that because, like I said, it was some of the best football you've seen from a lot of guys on this team. He does bring a bunch of energy. I think that's a big thing with CJ is he's bringing energy to a unit that did not have it. We learned they need to get Goddard involved. Yeah, so that's another big takeaway today. 10 receptions, 170 yards, even when A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are back. Listen, I know those guys need to get their targets, and they should. They're superstars in this league. If Devontae is not seriously concussed and doesn't miss much time, I really think he could not lead the league in receptions, but at least be top 5, top 10 in receptions. Still, you see what a weapon like Dallas Goedert can be. Multiple big third down conversions. Make him your third down guy. How about that catch with one hand turns into a missed tackle, spins upfield, and turns it into a 20-yard game from what could have been a drop on a crucial third down, and then a 61-yard gain running down the field after a big catch. And he makes a lot of contested catches too. Even when your stars are back, I'd like to see that utilization from Dallas Goedert, especially on third downs. Can any of you Eagles fans be classy and not annoying? I haven't said any bad words about the Saints this entire time, aside from the cheap hit on Devontae Smith. But yeah, sure. I'm sorry that the Saints lost today. We had a great time. And hey, if you're so mad about Eagles fans, stop letting us take over your stadium. Like, we show up to every stadium and half of it's Eagles fans. If you're so worried about it, buy the tickets. Don't let us come. Are you confused about Jahan not getting involved? Jahan, this is actually a great question too, because you'd think today with 3 receivers out, he would be one of the go-to guys, and he wasn't. I think part of it is him being so new and really not having any time to learn this offense. He got traded for in the last week of preseason, so he kind of just gets thrust in there, right? 2, I think you're seeing why he wasn't the wide receiver 1 and first round overall selection with the Commanders. He's smaller. He kind of gets, they showed it on the 4th and 3 that I've been complaining about. They were trying to go to Goddard, and Dotson got bullied on his route to the point he got in Goddard's way. So I think there are ways to get him the ball, but he's kind of just smaller, right? He's just a smaller guy, and he's not as crisp and clean. I know Devontae is also smaller, but you can kind of tell the difference. He's shorter than Devontae. He's smaller. It just feels like he kind of gets bullied on a lot of his routes. So I think that's kind of the problem with him, but I want to see a 17-game sample size of him, not necessarily 3 games so far, in which he didn't really have the offseason work. My guess is he'll get more and more work as the season goes and as he gets comfortable in this offense, and as Jalen Hurts gets more comfortable with him. Jalen's definitely a guy who has a trust tree level, and there are various levels that you can be in the trust tree. AJ Brown is at the top of the tree in the leaves. Devontae Smith is among the limbs. Britton Covey, after 3 years, has made his way up the trunk of the tree, of the trust tree. He's up there. And people are asking, why was he throwing a Covey so much last week? Why is he involved? He runs routes well, and he catches the ball. That's why he's moving up the trust tree. So I think Dotson really isn't there yet. He's still at the roots of the tree, of the Jalen Hurts trust tree. So we'll see as 17 games go. Kubiak is young and didn't want to adjust his game plan. I honestly think the Eagles just did a good job at blowing up their game plan, and we can probably leave it there, but it was phenomenal from them. Like I said, wow. That was incredible from the Eagles to win that game, because for a long time, it didn't look like they had it. And it was frustrating because there were so many different ways they could have won that game early on. And you thought, damn, we're dominating this game, and we have 0 points on the scoreboard. And they come back and win it. They go to 2-1. It feels like they should be a 2-1 team. They should have maybe lost today. They should have maybe won last week. It kind of all evens out in the end. That's the beauty of the NFL. The Saints look great. They score 40-plus points. They're averaging 45 a game. They have less than 100 yards of offense through 3 quarters today. Only put up 12 points on the board. It's the parity of the league. The Vikings are 3-0. They beat a Texans team we thought would be good. The Steelers, with Justin Fields, who we didn't even know their starter, they win again today. They beat a 2-0 team. Are they good? The Ravens, who we thought would be really good, they're 0-2. Every team has question marks about themselves right now. The Eagles seem to answer some of these. Glad we have a week 5 bye. Hated it first, but now need it. Great point right there. The Eagles will now travel to Tampa Bay. How many of those guys will travel there after a game like this? Will Darius Slay be able to play? Will Devontae Smith be able to play? Will Lane Johnson, will those guys clear concussion protocol? How's A.J. Brown's hamstring right now? We will find it all next week on the road. Another NFC South game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who lost today at home to the Bucs. So that'll be interesting. What Tampa Bay Bucs team are we getting? And how many of our guys are going to be out there? But wow, what a win. Way to stick to it. Hats off to the defense through and through, and what was the best defensive performance in over a year from the Philadelphia Eagles, and some of the best games we've seen as an Eagle from guys like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Dallas Goedert. Another phenomenal performance from Zach Bond. And how about the offensive line guys stepping up, thrust into a tough scene with Tyler Steen and Fred Johnson? A lot to be hopeful for in those young guys. We love it all. The Eagles are 2-1. I'm going to go breathe now. We'll be back this week with a preview show talking about that game against the Buccaneers, and we'll see what the Cowboys do here against the Ravens for Kevin's team. We'll be back this week. Thanks for joining us. 2-1. Never a doubt.